Why can't you tell an egg a joke? Because it will crack up.
You are listening to the Keeping It Juicy podcast.
Your main squeeze in nutrition.
Don't forget to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for a brand new episode.
Also, don't forget to add us on Instagram and Facebook at Keeping It Juicy Podcast.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Today is episode 75. I think we both can't believe we have made it to episode 75. But today we're going to be talking about glorified candy bars, which AKA are protein bars. And we're going to be throwing in some of our favorite and least favorite like protein drinks as well. But before we do that, we are going to jump into the new nutrition in the news. So a new study has found an association between low to average levels of vitamin D and high numbers of COVID-19 cases and mortality rates across 20 European countries. So basically, this study looked at the relationship between vitamin D status and mortality due to COVID-19. So as we know, Italy and Spain both have experienced high COVID-19 mortality rates, and the new study shows that both of these countries actually have lower than average vitamin D levels, more than most Northern European countries. This is partially because people in Southern Europe, particularly the elderly, avoid strong sun, while pigmentation also reduces the natural vitamin D synthesis. The highest average levels of vitamin D are actually found in Northern Europe due to consumption of cod liver oil and vitamin D supplements, and possibly less sun avoidance, which I found really interesting. Scandinavian nations are among the countries with the lowest number of COVID-19 cases and mortality rates per head of population in Europe. So the main takeaway from this study is that it's just an association. It is not a cause and effect relationship whatsoever. Most research supports that those with a compromised immune system or a weakened immune system, the elderly have a weakened immune system, are most likely to suffer the most consequences from COVID. Whether or not vitamin D plays a part in immunity, that's a completely different conversation to have, and as we know, overall diet pattern as well. But how the mortality rate is spread across the European countries, there was an association between vitamin D and mortality.
That's definitely interesting. Who even thought to check the vitamin D status in like, I get this is not a causation by any means, but who thought to compare the two? I
Well,
wonder.
from research that I've seen, I mean, vitamin D has been gaining in popularity for
Well,
different
yeah.
types of cancers, for even mood disorders like depression and bipolar. So I think just vitamin D in general has been gaining a lot of traction as like a nutrient of interest because it is a nutrient of concern for at least a lot of people in America. And then they may have just decided, well, let's look at Europe too.
Watch out, everyone. Like, we thought toilet paper was going to be an issue. We're going to have issues with vitamin D shortages now.
Seriously, just go get your sunshine, people.
Or just lay out in the front line. I don't know, something. But
Yeah, a
so
little bit outside.
just a little bit. We don't need to get like sunburned or anything.
No.
But with that being said, that's interesting. We do want to do a quick update on our hometowns. Southeast Texas, still climbing. We're at 808 cases. I guess, there's still about, I want to say 30 to 40% that recovered. And then it went up to 36 deaths. I mean, that it's nothing dramatic in regards to numbers, but it keeps climbing. I feel like that still says something because we haven't even plateaued yet, or we're not even going down. And actually, Texas has been open for 1 to 2 weeks now. In Texas, just yesterday, not specifically in our area, but they reached the highest, I guess, outbreak of cases in one day yesterday.
Mm.
Granted, it's like North Texas or Central Texas,
Mm.
but
That's interesting.
I mean, and there was actually another news article that was talking about how the trends are not reflecting what Texas thought it would happen. They're like, okay, we'll just open things slowly and slowly, but cases just kind of spiked again, which,
I mean, what did they expect? I find it interesting that they had the largest increase, 1 to 2 weeks after things opened up. I mean, I think that is semi-common sense, but
right, but I don't know what that will say. I mean, who knows? We might still remain open.
right.
Um, I'm still going to take the same precautions I've always done,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah. Now
that's
it's just a
just
choice if you want to, stay home more than
yeah.
some other people.
Yeah, and people, oh my God, I went to the store just yesterday and I was getting so claustrophobic in an aisle and people were not practicing social
Oh,
distancing whatsoever. Like there was huge clusters of family on top of other clusters of family and then a couple and then just all in one aisle and I was like, holy shit, I need to get out of here.
move. Yeah.
And I don't like going to the stores. And of
Mm.
course, like that, the store that I went to was busier than usual too.
Mm-hmm.
Like we even had to stop by a tool store, and the Harbor Freight is never busy, but it's like all the guys that needed tools decided to occupy
Come out in
that
the same
store.
day.
Right. And I was like, why does it feel more crowded than it was before?
Everyone's doing like home projects or something.
Probably, but my God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Weird times. But here in San Diego, our confirmed cases is up to 5,662, and our death count is up to 209. Um, Supposedly things are starting to open back up. I haven't seen a major change in this quite yet. Um, but in addition to our governor's regulations on what can open up, there's still the county guidelines, which are the San Diego guidelines, and then it's the individual city guidelines, and my city is Chula Vista. So in Chula Vista particularly, I haven't seen much change. The biggest change I guess I've seen is that they did open up beaches again, but you can't stop on the beach, meaning you can't, take a towel and hang out there. You have to keep moving, which yes and no could be helpful. I feel like the more you move, the more you come into contact with people. Um, there's a couple new trails that have reopened up and they just encourage social distancing. Um, so it's interesting.
Because we trust people.
I know, right? Self-enforcing.
So those are the updates in our hometowns, and let us know how you guys feel about it. Without further ado, we're going to kind of go into the main topic of this episode, which is first we're going to go into protein bars. Let's start off with the worst ones, in our opinion. So the first one is pure protein. So it basically averages about 200 calories per bar and 20 grams of protein, 7 grams of fat, and 20 grams of carbs, and a few grams of fiber. Not the best, but there's an extremely long list of ingredients. If you take a look at it, holy shit, there's a lot of fillers, flavors, and preservatives. And not that it makes any of the ingredients bad, it's just what these ingredients are. It's just, I and they don't taste the greatest either.
They don't. And if you've ever had like some of the flavors, like there's like a chewy inside and then like a caramel layer and then like a chocolate outer layer, and it's like clearly that's what all these, fillers and things are doing. They're giving it that
Right.
different texture. Is that really necessary? Like, I don't think so.
It's
It's
just,
just making it exciting, mouthfeel and whatnot, but the
it's
more
not. It's
intricate
not
you make a
exciting.
product, yeah, it still doesn't taste that good. But the more textures you add, the more ingredients you kind of have too.
Right.
So why does it have to be so fancy?
I don't know. And that protein bar is pretty popular. Like you can literally find it anywhere. You can
Hmm.
find it at Sam's Club, Costco,
And gas
Walmart.
stations, they're
Yeah.
everywhere,
So I'm
everywhere. So the next one is, we just had to throw it in here. Did y'all know that Snickers made a protein bar? Protein or candy bars have entered the chat. So, uh, the makers of Snickers, the other candy bars they actually make high protein varieties of those candy bars as well. I believe there's a high protein Milky Way, Twix, the whole thing. I believe you can only get them at like select GNC stores or like online or something. They're obviously not readily available at the grocery stores and gas stations and whatnot. But these have about 200 calories, give or take 18 grams of protein, around 7 grams of fat, and 18 grams of carbs. Not surprisingly, when you look at the ingredient list, it is pretty similar to pure protein.
But at this point, I would rather have the Snickers
Oh,
protein bar than a
absolutely.
pure protein.
Absolutely. There's not a doubt in my mind that the Snickers protein bar tastes way better than the pure protein bar.
Oh yeah. And then the next one, I think I remember mentioning this before, and Gatorades, if you guys didn't know, they don't just sell drinks. They also have their own protein bars, which it doesn't taste too bad at all. Tastes better than a pure protein. Keep in mind, when you look at companies like Gatorade, a lot of Gatorade products are marketed and designed for athletes, but people forget that. Um, and or those that expend a lot of energy in general, or if you run like 5 to 6 miles a day. I don't
Or
know.
you hike a lot or you bike a
Right,
lot, you expend a lot of energy.
right. And just as one protein bar alone, it's 350 calories, 20 grams of protein, which is I will go into that. And then it's 45 to 55 grams of carbs and 13 or so grams of fat. So you're trading off, you're getting more calories, but you're not getting more calories from protein. You're getting more calories from the fat and the carbs. So if you're trying to put on weight, this is fantastic. But I mean, it's definitely higher in carbs for a reason, but that's because, like we said, it's for those that expend a lot of energy in general. We've said before, carbs are not the enemy, and they are needed for fuel and recovery. And the issue here is the source of the carbs is very, very poor. I mean, the main sources of these carbs are actually just sugar and cornstarch. I mean, granted, they're pretty simple, and you might need that when you expend that many calories and whatnot. But if you're the average person, this is not it. And on top of that, the ingredient list is extremely long, and it's even longer than pure protein and Snickers.
Maybe
So,
put together. But yeah, the thing I think people need to remember is that Gatorade products are marketed to athletes, those that expend a lot of energy, who are pushing their bodies, close to fatigue. You need something a little bit more calorie dense. But, 350 calories, that's, you know, quite a lot for someone who didn't burn many calories. So just something to keep in mind. Um, so the main issue is that many people, and by no fault of, people or whatever, but just the way marketing works and whatnot, we associate protein bars with health and weight loss. And I hope we've kind of sent the message a little bit that that's not the case.
mm-mm,
If you start, chowing down a couple Gatorade bars a day with the hopes of losing weight, you're probably going to find it pretty challenging to be in a calorie deficit.
mm-hmm,
Not that the Gatorade bar is horrible and bad for your health. It's just, if you're replacing your meals with it, but still trying to be in a deficit, and you're eating a couple of these a day, you might not end up being in a deficit, is all I'm trying to say.
Right.
Therefore, weight loss will be challenging.
Right, like she said, people do often substitute protein bars for actual meals, so that's a big issue. And once in a while on a super busy day, then that's obviously the best solution. You don't have time to sit down and eat a big ass meal and still continue to do your work. But if we're talking about if you do this on a consistent basis, it's not really recommended to be consuming that much processed food in the first place. And yes, protein bars are heavily processed, believe it or not.
How dare you?
but
Yeah.
but like we said, just if you have a couple of these a day,
Mhm.
just the Gatorade bars, you can easily eat almost close to 700, 800 calories
Oh,
without
easy.
knowing it.
Mhm.
So,
Right. So just be mindful of the protein bar that it actually is. So we
mhm,
are going to go into some of the better choices. And of course, like this is just kind of better in our opinion. If you're an athlete and you're burning a ton of calories per day, the Gatorade bar might be better for you and what you're doing.
right.
But for the rest of us regular folk, these are kind of the better choices. So, if you guys have heard of the RX bar, it has gained a lot of popularity recently as a whole foods protein bar. And these do have about 200 calories, 8 grams of fat, 25 grams of carbs, and about 12 grams of protein, lower in protein than some of the other ones that we already mentioned. You know, a protein bar generally will have about 20. So, this one
Mhm,
is on the lower end of that spectrum, but that's okay. That's mostly because the ingredient list is much, much shorter and they're foods that you can like easily identify. You know, the ingredients are like raisins, eggs, dates, things like that. It still does have natural flavor listed as one of the ingredients on the label, which, as we know, doesn't mean shit, but it is a step in the right direction.
So, well, I actually like RX bars, but I don't eat them on a consistent basis.
Mm-mm.
A protein bar that I do eat on a consistent basis is Quest bars. um, well, this protein bar is debatable for some people because they do have a long list of ingredients and they're pretty heavily processed as well. It's kind of it is very processed. But the pro here is that they do have a lot of fiber, which is fantastic, which we know is a common nutrient of concern for many people. And a lot of protein bars tend to lack in this whole fiber in the first place. I mean, if you've ever seen the ingredient list of other protein products, they might have sugar, alcohol, or shit ton of sugar, alcohol instead of dietary fiber instead, which is also problematic. Um, a single Quest bar has around 20 grams of protein and about 14 grams or so of fiber. As granted, the fiber added to these bars is still just a single source of fiber, and it's always best to get a blend of both soluble and insoluble fiber. It's like what you would get from eating a variety of vegetables, fruits, beans, and legumes. But in a pinch, these bars can get your fiber and protein intake up pretty quickly. So that's really good. That's why I like it, just because of the fiber. But a lot of times with protein bars, people also forget that the fat that is in the protein bars, which I know this is a side comment, but a lot of the times that fat is typically saturated fat, not the unsaturated fat that's supposed to be more heart healthy. So keep that
Mhm.
in mind. And
Mhm.
I wouldn't make it a regular habit of consuming protein bars, but have it more as an emergency snack if you're hungry or something like that.
Right, like we kind of said, like when you're in a pinch or something.
Right.
Um, I think it's important to note you can get a decent protein bar, especially a Quest bar, at pretty much any single gas station. So if your day didn't quite go as planned, you didn't get home quite in time for dinner or whatever, you didn't pack your lunch, or who knows, like things happen in life, you can confidently go to a drugstore, a gas station, and get a decent protein bar as kind of like that backup plan. Quest bars are one of our favorites. Some people don't like the consistency or the flavor. That's just debatable. Like in the same category as like Quest bars, I would also put the One protein bars. Those have come out on the market recently too. They kind of fall in the same category as Quest. Like they have the high protein, decent fiber, low sugar, but different flavor varieties. So try those if you haven't already. Keep those on your radar. But now we're going to jump into the protein powders. And the first one that we want to talk about, which is the worst in our opinion, is Muscle Milk. So for a protein powder, Muscle Milk is very high in fat. It has a whopping 9 grams per serving, and it's not a good source of fat either. I believe it comes from either sunflower oil. Um, so, you know, these are also pretty high in calories for a protein powder. They have 280 calories per serving and 21 grams of carbs per serving. This really is more of like a meal replacement idea versus a protein drink because of the higher quantity of the other macronutrients. And the ingredient list is literally just embarrassing. Like it's protein powder, but it's a whole bunch of like other crap in it too. Like, the sources of fat, the sources of carbs in it, and then just the fillers and flavorings, and I wouldn't touch it.
So let's not even mention the scandal that they had a few years back, where the protein powders actually had some of the banned substances that the NCAA did not approve of whatsoever in their protein powders. I mean, that's just saying it lightly.
Yeah.
And Muscle Milk was actually found to have IGF-1, which is a banned substance. So IGF-1 is basically insulin-like growth factor. And this was an issue around 2008. And since then, they have cleaned it up, but still, I'll pass. So,
yeah. We never like to, completely bash foods. If you love Muscle Milk, fine, keep having your
right.
Muscle Milk. But it's just, I would definitely pass this up. Like, I would just have regular milk at this point. Like, milk is still a good source of fat and carbs and protein. Like,
Mm-hmm.
without all the extra flavorings and stuff. Like,
Right.
just my opinion on that. So some of the better choices for when it comes to protein powder is usually any like whey protein isolate powder is a better choice. Whey protein isolate just means that the whey protein is like isolated from all of the other components in the milk. And it also means that it's usually just protein. Um, it won't have too many carbs or fat, but there will be some just due to flavor and consistency purposes. You might see, 2 grams of fat or 2 grams of protein. I'm sorry, 2 grams of carbs. And that's just, again, from the flavor and consistency of the product. So usually 1 scoop of a whey protein will have about 25 grams of protein and about 120-ish calories. The calories will kind of vary, again, based on flavors and consistency based on what ingredients the manufacturer added. Personally, my favorite brand is the PE Science brand. I really like their flavors, and they have plant-based options as well, which I enjoy.
Right. I actually like that brand too. Personally, just
Mhm.
because not only do they have those plant-based options, but they have really good flavors.
They do.
And on top of that, another Quest protein actually has really good protein
Mm-hmm.
shake,
Mm-hmm.
protein powders as well, and it
Mm-hmm.
floats up really nicely when
It
you do
does.
drink it. Mm-hmm.
It does. I will add one more thing about the PE Science ones is they have a snickerdoodle flavor,
Oh,
and the snickerdoodle flavor is actually a whey casein protein blend. So, the protein profile is a little bit different than a whey protein isolate.
mm-hmm.
But the thing with having the whey and the casein is that you have like that quicker
Right,
digesting protein with the slower digesting. So you might have a different satiety with it. But my
right.
main point is that whey protein is typically a little bit thinner, where
Mm-hmm.
casein is a little bit thicker. So
Thick.
from a food science cooking standpoint, whey casein protein blends are very nice to cook with, meaning that that flavor is phenomenal for protein waffles.
Ooh. Got a little hot in here.
So if you're looking for a protein to cook with, I would not suggest cooking with a whey protein isolate. Look for a protein blend. The Quest ones are pretty good to cook with too because they do have that frothiness to it. So total side point, but fun stuff.
Still very important.
Protein waffles are important, you know?
Right.
Like you can make a protein waffle with 1 scoop of the Snickerdoodle protein, 1 egg, and like water. Like that's all you need.
Right. So that's a really good one. And then the dietitian in me also likes likes this brand called Unjury. So it's supposed to be for bariatric patients, and typically we have samples to give to our bariatric patients out of the private practice that I teach at. And those stuff is really good. And not only do they have sweet flavors, but they have unflavored versions, and they have flavors where you can add to soups. Like there's a Santa Fe chili flavor protein powder.
Oh.
It smells just like a tomato soup concentrate. It's so good. So if you ever get burned out, because a lot of protein bars and shakes are sweet. I get really burned out. So having those flavors on hand just makes it 10 times better, or even the unflavored version.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Just because I think 20 grams is about 100 calories and it has amazing flavor payoff. So
nice. Good to know. Yeah, because sometimes they're way, way, way too sweet. That's why I've actually recently switched to more of a plant-based protein because they're not quite as sweet.
Right.
I've been enjoying this one from Vega. It's from Vega Protein. It's a matcha latte flavor.
I haven't tried the matcha latte, but I've tried the chocolate one. I was not a fan. I was not a fan.
I've tried a couple plant-based proteins that come in the matcha flavor, and I really like it because matcha has like an earthy taste to it, which plant-based protein has like an earthy taste to it too, but it's not too sweet. Like I do feel like I'm drinking a matcha latte, if that makes sense. But I feel like anytime you add chocolate to protein, it just doesn't work. I'd rather just have chocolate.
I agree, but I mean, if I'm gonna choose a flavor personally, I'll probably try the chocolate first, because a lot of times brands kind of miss it in regards to vanilla or strawberry flavors. So I always go for the chocolate, and the Vega chocolate would just, I don't know what was up with that.
I actually never go for the chocolate flavors. But I've seen matcha latte come out a lot in different protein brands, so keep an eye out for it. The Vega one, I believe, also has 100 milligrams of caffeine in that protein powder, so got a little kick there too.
Not a late night drink.
Not a late night drink, absolutely not. So
or else it's gonna get a little crazy up in here.
I mean, maybe it can be a late night drink. I don't know your life. So we will close out with our social media shout out of the day. It goes to _nutrition prescription, and she is an RD who supports ditching the diets, which we appreciate very much. She has these like cute little food graphics with little sayings and memes and just a lot of really good practical health tips as well that supports the whole ditching the diet idea. So thank you for your support. We do keep an eye out for likes, comments, messaging us, sending us things. So please send us stuff.
Yes, please.
We like to see it.
We definitely do appreciate it. But with that being said, be safe. Don't touch anybody. Don't do anything stupid, or else you're going to have another spike in cases like Texas is having right now. So,
right.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Keeping It Juicy podcast.
Your main squeeze of nutrition.
Don't forget to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for a brand new episode.
Also, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Keeping It Juicy Podcast.
We'd love to hear from you, so please leave us a review.
5 stars, no less.
On whatever platform you're listening to, or send us an email at keepingitjuicypodcast@gmail.com.
Or if you have any topics you'd like for us to touch upon, shoot us an email. Until next time, don't do anything that I wouldn't do.
What do you get when you play tug of war with a pig?
What?
Pulled pork. Did you hear about the angry waffle iron?
Oh my God. What?
He just flipped.
Shut up. When potatoes have babies, what are they called? Tater tots. Why can't you tell an egg a joke? Because it will crack up.